Put out a calendar for the entirety of the Highland Heights activities for the next year. And we have that calendar. They're down here on the front. There may be some out in the back. So please pick this up. This has, as best we could get ascertained, the dates of major events, VBS, mission trip, of our gospel meetings and seminars that we're going to be doing throughout the course of the year. Training workshop dates are on there. Retreat dates are on there. So please make sure you pick one of those up. You can put that on your refrigerator or wherever it is that you keep all that information, and you'll know what's going on. Youth, there's even stuff on here for you as well. Some at least date ranges of Lads to Leaders work and whatnot. We want to try to communicate as best we can the great things that are happening at Highland Heights. And you'll notice in the bottom there's a little picture. It just simply says the chair. Next week I'm going to tell you what that means and what that's all about. One of the things we are going to do this year is have an underlying theme for our studies together, and kind of a focal point for all of us, what we hope will guide all of our families throughout this year in our Bible studies, and it is the chair. What does it mean? Well, you'll have to come next week and find out. This morning, I gave you the thought, what I hope was an encouragement to you, the idea that I believe this year, 2018 that's coming up, has the potential to be the best year we've ever had. And I mean that from a congregational standpoint, Highland Heights being positioned to excel and accomplish some things that maybe we haven't been able to dream about in a long time. I mean that for you as an individual or your family unit. That maybe there's some spiritual development, some emotional development, things ways that you can progress in your own self-development, in your walk with God. But you have to believe that. You can't be wishy-washy about it. You have to be convinced that it's possible. And I do believe it's possible. It's possible because I've learned at least the way I believe that God works in many ways is that God blesses us through the actions that we take. As we go out and as we live our lives, the decisions that we make, the actions that we take, the work that we do, God blesses us in conjunction with those things. And I fully believe that God wants to see His people blessed in this year and in the years to come. But we're focusing right now on this next 12 months. And with that, though, since we're coming from the premise that God works in conjunction with what we do to bless us through those things, we understand that we're not sitting back with a remote in hand or a tablet in our lap playing games just waiting for something good to happen. So we've asked ourselves, what can we do? What can I do as an individual, or what can you do as an individual or with your family that will help till the soil, prepare the ground of your life and the ground of your heart, that will allow God to bring about the great increase in your life this next year? What are some of those disciplines and mindsets that can be implemented into your own life that will help bring about the things that could make this year the greatest year of your life? And I've given you, going through 6 P's of success with this. This morning I gave you 3 of them, and we started off talking about that we have to have a purpose. It's great to be able to say, and we need to be going through our life with the broad understanding, the broad purpose that I am here to please God. But we've got to get more specific than that, church, because if that's the most specific you ever get, you're just gonna be spinning your wheels. You're just gonna be running in circles all year long. How are you going to please God? What problem has God put in your life that He's also giving you the power and the opportunity to find a solution for, that you can put your focus to? Can you define why you are doing what you're doing in life? And when you have a purpose, it's going to help you actually accomplish something. But in conjunction with our purpose, we also noted that you have to have passion. Paul uses this word eager in Romans 1:15. He says, I'm eager to bring the gospel to you who are in Rome. And we said that word eager, we don't really get the sense of it in English, but it means to be overflowing, boiling over with passion, excitement. We don't want to be dull about the way that we talk about our faith life. We don't want our faith to be a ho-hum Yeah, it's just part of it. Everybody has one. We need to be able to be excited about it. Can you show passion for what's happening in your faith walk, in your own development? Can you show passion for what God's people are doing here at Highland Heights? And if you show passion, even if you may not always have the answers to the questions that people are going to bring to you, passion, people are more willing to listen to and follow passion than a lackadaisical approach to things. So we need to have passion to go along with that purpose. But we also talked about the idea that in conjunction with the passion, we need to have priority. And this is where we stopped earlier today. Priority, we're going to have to rearrange a few things. We're going to have to create a kind of an exchange program. If you want to see significant differences happen in your life, then you're going to have to change some habits. You're going to have to change some mentalities. It's the way it always is. And it's not necessarily a fruit basket turnover. You don't have to overhaul your life. But ask yourself regarding any given discipline or any given activity that you have that's a habit of your life, what redeeming value does this bring to me? How does this help me or my family grow? And if you can't answer that question, if these activities don't make you better in your service for God or in your existence as a human being, then it might be worth reevaluating whether those things need to be a part of your life or not. And then you find those simple disciplines to exchange, and you practice them every single day. And we made the observation that when it comes to prioritizing our lives, there is a little bit of pain involved. Either you have the pain of discipline or the pain of regret. The difference is that the pain of discipline weighs ounces, but the pain of regret later in your life weighs tons. Which would you rather have? And so if we're going to see changes in our lives, if God is going to be able to bless us the way that I think He wants to, then we are going to have to respond by changing the things in our lives to make a new priorities and put our activities and our disciplines and our focuses where they need to be. Here's the fourth P. This is where we left off. So once we find that passion and purpose and we have our priorities talked about, then we have this. You need to be persistent. As this year goes on, you're going to make decisions, you're going to have disciplines you're trying to add, you're going to have new habits you're trying to put into place, and you're going to want to quit at some point. We always do. That's what happens with resolutions, right? We talked about that. There's a difference between resolutions and disciplines and goals. The thing is that resolutions, we get to that point where it kind of wears out and we want to quit, and so we just quit. You're going to want to quit on the changes that you've said are going to happen in your life, but don't do it. Don't do it. Now, I wish I could give you a lot more energetic and a lot more profound way to deal with persistence, but that's about the best I got for you. Don't give up. When it gets hard, don't give up. When you get burnt out from doing this thing over and over and over, don't give up. When the day comes that you start looking around, you're going, you know what, I've been at this for weeks now, and I haven't developed I haven't found the progress that I've wanted to make. And you know what, it's been 3 weeks since I started. Don't give up. Don't give up. When you get to the book of Leviticus in your daily Bible reading, don't give up. I promise it's worthwhile in the long run. The Bible tells us in Galatians chapter 6, verse 9, he says, "And let us not grow weary of doing good, for in due season we will reap if we don't give up." Isn't that true? Can you imagine what it would be like if a farmer threw his seed out into the field and then in a handful of days he didn't see a crop and a harvest, so he said, well, I guess I'm just never going to make it as a farmer. He really wouldn't, would he? Sometimes those disciplines take time. Most of them take time. And there's that pain that comes in with discipline. The pain of discipline is that you're going to be uncomfortable for a while. But let us not grow weary of doing good, because in due season we will reap if we do not give up. The Proverbs 24 verse 16 tells us, "For the righteous falls 7 times and rises again, but the wicked stumble in times of calamity. What's the difference in somebody that has run the race of faithfulness versus the person that never finishes that race? The fact that people of faith get up even when they fall. That's one of the things about the Christian walk that is supposed to be, that is part of it. We are going to stumble, but we get back up. We are going to doubt whether or not we're doing the right thing sometimes. But you know what? We get back up and we keep going. Because even if the righteous falls 7 times, he rises again. 2 Thessalonians chapter 3, verse 13, Paul gave this simple encouragement to the Thessalonian Christians. He said, "As for you, brothers, do not grow weary in doing good." Persistence takes the strength of mind. It takes resolve. It takes determination. But if your purpose, passion, and priorities are set in place, and if they are deep within you, then your persistence through the rough patches will be the secret ingredient that makes success for your life. I believe God rewards persistence. And if we will stay persistent in the things that we're trying to change in our lives, God will bless those things. Fifthly, you have to become a pupil. Now that may be an interesting thought for many of us because we're thinking to ourselves, "Cory, I've been out of school a long time. I didn't think I was supposed to learn anymore." But you know, there's nothing more frustrating than to work with a person who thinks they know everything. And consider that there's nothing more stifling to your own growth than to be a person who thinks they know everything. Proverbs chapter 1, verse 8 makes this statement, the wise man speaking. He says, "Hear, my son, your father's instructions, and forsake not your mother's teaching." And you're going to see a warning and an encouragement similar to that at least 3 different times throughout the course of the entire book of Proverbs. Hear your father's instructions. Don't forsake your mother's teaching. Well, in order for that to happen, then you must be a pupil. In order to grow, we must all be teachable. Regardless of how old you are, regardless of what level of experience and knowledge you already have, we must be teachable. And that also means then that we must attach ourselves to people and things that can actually teach us. Teaching, for one, obviously comes from the Scriptures. It's one of the reasons why we encourage each other to be in our Bibles all of the time. Psalm 119, verse 24 says, "Your testimonies are my delight. The Scriptures are my counselors." Now, you've heard me tell you, you've heard me challenge you constantly to be a part of this Bible reading challenge for this next year. And some of you have done this for several years now, that we've been doing this kind of challenge. I want to actually up the ante a little bit for you on this. I don't want you to just simply read but I want to add a layer. This year, if you choose to read through the Bible, if you're going to add that discipline or continue that discipline, I want to challenge you to read your Bible every day with the expectation of learning something. Church, that may very well be the single biggest gap in our study these days. Because especially for those of us that have spent a lot of time in the Word of God throughout the course of the years, a lot of times we have read some passages over and over. We've read it so many times. Or we get to that point that we just kind of scoot our way through it because it's so familiar to us, or some of those tough parts, that we stop trying to learn. And even if we never say it to ourselves, in practicality, our mindset is that, well, I've read that so many times, I know what that means, and I know how to deal with that, and so we just scoot on through it. And we don't actually stop to think about the words anymore. And so I want to encourage you, I want to challenge you that as you read your Bible every day, I want you to read it with the thought of learning something new. Piecing together concepts, or asking yourself hard questions about phrases that maybe you've been too afraid to try to figure out. Instead of just glossing over the top. And that may be hard for some of us because we want to believe that we know it well. And it's not to say that we don't know the Bible well, but we can always know it better. And if we can set our ego and our perceived knowledge aside, and if we sought to learn something new from the book that is a lamp to our feet and a light to our way, how much more would we grow? We would grow tremendously. But we need to not just be a pupil of the Scriptures in that we read the Scriptures. We need to also be a pupil to someone who knows more than you do. Now that's also difficult, especially when we reach a certain point in our lives, because we want to, it's almost a shock to our pride to think that I would go and try to attach myself to somebody that I'm going to have to admit, you know more about this than I do. But Proverbs 15:22 says that without counsel, plans fail, but with many advisors, they succeed. Whatever it is that you have as your goals for this next year, there is somebody, somewhere, who has done what you want to do. And there are probably a lot of someones who have done what you want to do. Seek them out. Get their insight. Listen to what they say. Imitate what they've done in order to be successful in seeing those things happen in their lives. And understand this simple concept, church. You will become like the people you surround yourself with. Listen to that. You will become like the people you surround yourself with. If they don't challenge you to be better, then you are never going to rise above where you are now. Truth is, they may drag you down. But if they can challenge you, and if they can guide you into better knowledge of God and into better application of His Word in your life, then you're going to find yourself growing. Because we all need to be teachable. We need to become a pupil. And finally, we need to plan. We need to plan. Allow me to be rather blunt with you here for just a moment. If you have intentions for this next year, but no game plan for implementing them, you're going to fail. If you have goals for this next year, but you have no plan for implementing them, you're going to fail. You will never achieve your intentions. God does not work in our lives merely through good intentions. Go back to that same Harvard study that we talked about earlier this morning. I told you where they went through the MBA students and they asked them how many of them had goals for their life and had written goals specifically. 84% of those students said they had no goals for their life. Of the remaining students that were in that study, 13% of them had goals but didn't write them down. 3% had goals and wrote them down in a place that they would see them consistently. After 10 years, the people that conducted the study met back up with all of those students, and they did surveys again to find out how their lives had gone since that first survey. After 10 years, here's what they found. The conclusions were astonishing, but maybe not quite surprising. The 13% of the class that had goals but did not write them down, they earned twice the amount of money as the 84% who had no goals. It doesn't surprise you, does it? But the 3% who had written down their goals, on average, were earning 10 times as much as the other 97% of the students that were there. Now listen, this study was made about monetary things. I get it. We're not all about monetary things here. But I want you to hear the principle of what's happening. Because in principle, I think the same thing could be true about our own personal and spiritual development. People who don't write down their goals tend to fail easier than the ones who have than the ones who have plans. Do you know what you're going to do? Have you written it down so that you can see it and have it in the forefront of your mind and be focused on it? Have you ever noticed the fact that the Apostle Paul made it a regular habit to state his plans, have it in written form? In Romans chapter 15, he tells the Roman Christians that he says, I hope that I can come by and see you in passing on my way to Spain. What was Paul's goal? He had two of them right there. One, he wanted to see the Roman Christians. He actually told them that in chapter 1 too. He wanted to see them, but he also had a much bigger goal. And he said, my goal is to get to Spain. Where as far as we knew, the gospel hadn't reached at that point in history. He had it written down. Maybe he got there, maybe he didn't. The Bible doesn't tell us. But in 1 Timothy, he also speaks to Timothy about his plans. My plan is to come see you. That is my goal. Paul orchestrated, here's another thing that Paul planned. Paul orchestrated the effort to raise funds for the Christians in famine-starved Jerusalem. And he wrote about it every chance that he could, telling the Christians what the goal was and where they were going to get the funds from. And he made it a point to tell them, I'm coming to you so that you can disperse these funds and I will take it and take it back to Jerusalem. Paul understood the Harvard study principles even then, that when you write your goals down, you're more likely to meet them. But when you don't have a plan, you don't know how you're going to reach your destination. And so whatever disciplines or goals you have for yourself or your family in 2018, you are going to be more likely to achieve them if you put a plan in place. That includes writing down what those specific goals are and have an outlined plan of how you're going to accomplish it. Now, does this mean that your plan is going to go exactly as you put it down on paper? No, not necessarily. You want to know the other thing that Paul was great at? Being flexible. Because quite often, his goals did not pan out the way that he wanted, and he had to adjust them accordingly. A good friend of mine once said, blessed are the flexible, for they shall not be easily bent out of shape. And I think he's right. Sometimes we're forced to change or tweak our plans, but the fact that we have something to tweak or to adjust means that we were already on a direct path to begin with. Because having to change them never stopped him from making plans and reaching for ambitions fueled by his purpose and his passion. And it should not do the same for us. The sad thing is, I'm going to give this little subtle hint. The sad thing is that most of us here are not going to go home today and take the time to write down goals for our next year. Or will you? Will you take the time to talk with your family about what your purpose for this next year is? Will you take time to try to figure out what you're passionate about? What it is that gets you excited in your service for God? Can you make a plan? Can you figure out what you're going to seek to learn? How you're going to be a pupil? Can you set in your mind a determination that you are going to be persistent even when the hard times come? These are your decisions. I can't make you do them. But church, I strongly believe that if we can implement these kinds of mentalities, these kinds of disciplines, that God's going to be able to bless us, and this will be the greatest year we've ever had, in some way, shape, form, or fashion. But there's no better way to start off a year, finish a year, and start a new one by getting your life right with God. And so if you're here this afternoon again, and you're not a Christian, the Lord spared you to this point to give you the opportunity to obey the gospel. What's going to stop you from doing it? And if you need prayers for strength, encouragement, or forgiveness, why would you not get your life right with God right here, right now? Why would you wait any longer? We want to help you. We want to be there for you and be that family to support you in whatever changes need to happen in your life. Let us know how we can help, please, right now, while we stand and sing.
Now I'm coming home.